And we are recording. Oh, the button has been pressed. Okay, here we go. We are recording. All right. Welcome, everyone, to episode 21 of the Bore and Stoke Podcast, brought to you by the Honda Goldwing and the Honda Goldwing Tour. And so without any further ado, let's take a really quick break to hear from our sponsor. Want to take your road trip game to the next level? Honda's got you covered with the 2026 Goldwing and Goldwing Tour. Where this podcast brings the stories, the Goldwing brings the miles. Smooth flat six power, ride modes, and available DCT that turns long days into easy ones. You're listening to Bore and Stoke, brought to you by Honda Powersports and the 2026 Goldwing. If you're going to ride something legendary. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to episode 21 of the Bore and Stoke Podcast. And as you can see, if you're watching this on the YouTubes, and you'll hear it in a sec if you're listening to us on the Spotify, we have a new member of our team, y'all. Who wants to do the honors of introducing our newest team
Drum
member?
roll, please.
Miss Sylvia
Ladies and
Houston.
gentlemen.
I took it right
Just
out of your mouth.
Sylvia Houston.
Boom, 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 boom.
Oh, thank you.
Welcome, Sylvia, to the Motorcycle.com crew. That's pretty exciting to have you on board.
Oh, thank you.
Are you feeling nervous?
Always, but I think I'll be okay. I'll live.
Yeah, I
That's
think
the
you'll be all
spirit.
right.
That's the spirit.
First female Motorcycle.com team member.
Welcome to the team, Sylvia. Really quick, like for the folks watching or listening to us, give us like the quick 30-second pitch about yourself. Like, what's your
Your
background?
little elevator pitch.
Yeah, what's your background? What kind of riding do you do? Like all that stuff.
Okay, I was 19. I bought a bike to save money on fuel. Didn't end up happening. Became addicted. Moved to California. While in California, I also didn't have much money. So motorcycling's, I bought a motorcycle to kind of keep my costs down. Got addicted to that. Went to a couple schools where I learned how to ride properly. And then I went to the track. Got addicted to the track. Ever since then, I've kind of upped my skills with more classes, and then I became a teacher myself. So I taught other people how to ride as well. And then one of my friends referred me to a rider talent job with HJC helmets, and I kind of started working in the industry that way. And I was on a ride for, I believe, the Suzuki GSX 8R, and I was the lead rider for that. So I was showing everyone around, and one of the journalists came up to me and said, "Hey, have you ever thought about being a motorcycle journalist?" And I was like, I didn't even know that was a job.
I just want to jump in and mention that the person that said that to you is the former editor-in-chief of this website, Kevin Duke.
Yes, Kevin Duke. What a sweet human being. And I'm so grateful to all the opportunities I've had throughout my motorcycling lifestyle. And here I am at Motorcycle.com.
I also want to note that I was at that intro.
Yes, you were.
And he was not the journalist that
And
referred.
so
You kind of did.
when I saw you leading the group, doing all the lead rides and everything, I was like, oh, cool. She's, because I had only known you, like I didn't really know you back then, so I'd only kind of seen what you've done with like wheelie schools and stuff like that. I was like, oh, cool. Yeah. She's leading the group now. She's like found her way into getting into the industry somehow. And this seems like a cool fit for her.
Yeah.
Like, and at the time we weren't hiring. So there's also that.
Right. No, I don't. It's okay. Look, I ended up coming here anyway, right? So it doesn't matter. Life happens in mysterious ways, and I'm happy to be where I'm at.
Since then, we have ridden together.
Yes.
Right? And I was like, oh, this is awesome. She can ride the wheels off of pretty much anything. So
Thank you.
we should find a way to bring her on board. So fast forward to today.
I do want to mention a couple points that, Sylvia, I don't think you did yourself justice with that explanation, but you also do a lot of track time, a lot of racing, supermoto stuff. You've been getting more and more into off-road trials, all sorts of things. I can tell the enthusiasm that comes out when you talk about all the different disciplines that you're trying and loving, and something's new and something's difficult. So, you have a well-rounded, breadth of experience, and you've also, spent some time on boats welding
Yes.
in the military as well. So that's pretty cool.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I wanted to keep it short because I tend to talk a lot. So thank you,
It's
Ryan.
okay.
Of course.
That's the point of a podcast.
Yep.
Is to,
Yeah.
We'll
all
try to
heard-
keep it concise.
One of these days we'll give Joe Rogan a run for his money and record like a 6-hour podcast.
I don't know. He's had a lot of the people from the Epstein files on
That's
at this
fair.
point, like 8 people. So
Well,
Just
I won't
true.
do that.
the length
Yeah,
of
let's not do
his the length of his pods, not the content of his pods.
Yeah. Oh, okay. Got it.
Okay, last thing, real quick. I heard from someone on this call that you have 17 motorcycles. Is that true?
Technically 18 because I bought one last week, but
Oh. Okay, well,
yeah.
do the list. Do the
True.
list. What are they?
Oh, no, you don't have to do the list, but I do want to know what you bought last week.
Last week, I bought a new to me 2023 Husqvarna 701 Supermoto. I already have one, but I bought
Nice.
another because I love them so much.
Nice.
That's my explanation.
Fantastic. Well, I guess
The haters will say you bought a parts bike.
I know. I might have. Cheaper and it takes less time than going through. Anyway.
Okay. What's your favorite bike of that group?
it's like
Ooh.
picking your favorite kid.
I don't
Okay,
have-
can I do one sport bike, one supermoto?
Sure.
Okay. Best sport bike, my favorite ultimate best. Gixxer 600. I know people hate them, but I absolutely love them. I absolutely love that there's no electronics. I love that I can get
Gixxer,
parts. I
bro.
love that they're cheap. Love. Don't care. And then the Husqvarna FS450. Love.
Ooh.
Love.
Mhm.
Best supermoto,
Dope.
hands down.
Hands down.
Dope.
Got it.
Yeah.
Good call.
All right.
Good call. All right. Well,
Let's get to it.
let's get to it. Well, again, welcome to the crew, Sylvia. Super
Thank you.
glad
Happy
to
to
have
have
you
you.
on board. And with that, we're going to jump right to our episode. And actually, we're going to jump into the last episode.
I got
Yeah, so if you guys had not seen or heard the previous episode, episode 20, that's the even numbered episodes are the ones where I interview someone, or in this case, 2 people. Episode 20 was my sit down chat with Zach Kortz and Ari Henning of Revzilla fame, On Two Wheels fame, so on and so forth. There's a good chance you know those two. I don't really need to explain who they are, but super good guys. I've known them for close to 20 years now. Super good dudes, super fun chat.
Way back
So,
when Ari was dreaded.
I was going to say, I actually had a question about his dreads in my list of things, but we just ran out of time and I couldn't ask
Ugh,
him. I was so
I don't
bummed.
want to
I
know.
was so bummed. But anyway, if you hadn't seen it or listened to it, go check it out. It's a fun listen. Those two have lots to talk about, and they are a wealth of knowledge. So, yeah, that was a fun one. With that, let's get into the news.
Not
and,
quite. So let's get into the
well-
breaking news from the Toronto Motorcycle Show.
That's right.
Via our Canadian correspondent, Dennis Chung.
This just
Yeah, I
in, you
got,
see?
I gotta get out of my home office for once and check out some bikes.
Excellent. Did you see anything cool?
Yeah, it was a smaller show this year than past years. A lot of OEMs weren't there, but there were some surprises there. At least surprises for me. Yamaha is bringing their Tenere 700 World Raid to Canada, which is the larger fuel tank, longer suspension, more off-road capable, and it's only available in Europe so far, so it's not in the US yet. But we might want to keep an eye open just in case it does.
Mm-hmm.
And the
There
other
are so many
surprise was
different Teneres
there
around the
so
world.
many variations.
We've
Yeah.
only had the one here, which I guess keeps things less confusing, but come on, man. Some cool stuff.
Well, Yamaha's basically just got the one adventure bike in their lineup now in the US. So there's room there for additional models.
For sure.
And the other surprise was Honda had the X80V 750 there, the adventure scooter, which it uses the NC engine with the DCT, and it's been in Europe, but we haven't seen it yet in North America. They weren't calling it a full product yet; they're calling it a potential future product. So they're just gauging interest to see if people at the show like it.
Yeah, that one's interesting because obviously I would love to have that here. I think I speak probably for the entire team on that one, but yeah, that's a really cool model that we constantly see when we're on press launches in Europe and whatnot. They're very popular, in Spain and other places over there. And man, I would love to have one of those here. But when I talked to Honda about that before, there were U.S. regulations basically stating there was some kind of red tape that couldn't classify it as a scooter. So they weren't going to bring it in as a motorcycle because it would be way too expensive or something. There was some kind of bureaucratic reason that they couldn't bring it in. I don't know if the same thing applies in Canada. Probably not, but I'm curious about that one.
Yeah, so we'll keep an eye on see what their feedback is like on that. But it'll be interesting if we get it up here.
As a quick aside, I'm looking at the picture that you sent over to us, Dennis, of the X80V 750. And I was just at your house yesterday, Ryan, and you have a Can-Am Canyon sitting outside. I'm looking at this Honda picture, and I'm thinking back to that Can-Am, thinking they kind of look like peas in a pod, except like the same person designed them both.
I'd rather have the Honda in my garage.
Same, 100% the same. But I'm like,
that's mean, but yeah,
I'm getting vibes.
If I had to trade,
I'm just getting vibes, is all I'm saying.
The last one that I saw of these in Europe had a full Repsol graphic kit on it. I had like its Yosh exhaust. It was sick. It was so cool. But I digress.
Cool. All right, that was some good news. Now let's get to some bad news.
Aw.
I know. I almost don't even want to say it. So
it's speculation around it for a minute, and now the news is official.
What is it, Ryan? I don't want to say it.
Yeah, I'll say it. I've already been telling our Australian colleagues. So MotoGP is going to be leaving Phillip Island starting in 2027, which is a big old bummer. As our esteemed colleague Rennie Skaesbrook put it, best racetrack on the calendar, shittiest fan experience. So hot takes from Mr. Skaesbrook there, but yeah, so it's moving from Phillip Island to South Australia to Adelaide, and it's now going to be a city circuit, so like a street circuit. So they've kind of vowed to make sure there's enough runoff everywhere and make it as safe as possible. But yeah, I mean, Phillip Island's been on the calendar for nearly 3 decades of MotoGP or GP racing, so big loss to the calendar there.
And it's by far the most popular track for both the riders and the spectators and the viewers who are watching it from home.
Yeah, I don't know. I've never been there, unfortunately. But
neither have I.
Yeah, I mean,
neither have
as far as watching and yeah, when you see interviews with the riders and whatnot, of course, Jack Miller's sad about it, but I think he's also putting on the proud Aussie face of like, it'll still be great in Adelaide too. But yeah, I think people are going to be bummed about that.
I mean, Jack is generally a guy who says what's on his mind. There was a really good quote here. It went something about, now that Dorna no longer owns MotoGP and it's now Liberty Media, and now the new entity is called MotoGP Sports Entertainment, the impetus for this change kind of comes from the name of this new ownership. Sports Entertainment, not exactly, staying true to the sport. And by taking GP away from Phillip Island and into a city center, more or less, their thinking is they're taking racing to the people, not trying to bring people to the racing.
Well, yeah, and I mean, as Rennie so eloquently put it, it seemed the facilities and the fan experience that you really had to want to get to Phillip Island, which again, people have been doing it for a long time, so it's not like it is what it is. But yeah, I that's a good way to put it. Bring it to the people.
Time will tell if it's successful or not, but losing. I mean, I can't judge this new Adelaide circuit without seeing anything yet. But just on the surface, it just really is a bummer that we're losing probably the coolest track on the calendar.
Yeah, I mean, I think what I'm really curious about is how they make it, without destroying the city, how they make it safe with runoff areas. Because I think they said, how long is the circuit going to be? 2.6 miles with 18 turns. That's a lot of space in a city. I think when they were talking about moving it to Albert Park before they made the decision to go to Adelaide, they were like, we're going to have to level all of the trees in the park. And, residents who walk their dogs there and whatnot were like, I'd rather you didn't. So speaking of safety, we have a couple of things come through the news pike involving some pretty significant recalls. Dennis, you want to take that?
This one's saucy.
Yeah, they're well, the most recent one is a recall for the Harley-Davidson Sportster S, and that's all model years going back to 2021 to 2026. What's interesting about this one, and somewhat embarrassing, is that this is technically a recall of a recall.
Ooh, do tell.
Last September, I think it was, that Harley had the first recall, which was because they were discovering that some upper triple clamps were developing cracks and fractures, and they were sort of like, okay, you know what? Let's fix that. So they issued a recall. They sent out a new reinforced design, and they sent that out. Unfortunately, they discovered that the recall kits being sent out included the old part.
Oops.
So they were sending out the faulty part. In some cases, they sent out the new part, but there were some casting issues to it that it wasn't quite up to snuff. So it was like, okay, we're either sending out the faulty part to begin with, or a badly produced corrected version.
Ooh, so, I've heard that's an important part of a motorcycle too.
It is somewhat. So they are issuing a recall so basically bikes that were sent in the first time have to go back again to check to make sure that they've got the correct parts. But they also recalled the recall kit. So yeah, the rare recall of a recall.
Yeah,
oh my gosh,
that's unfortunate.
And that's embarrassing. But also, I mean, there's also the other aspect of this, which is sure to piss off a lot of the Harley crew, is that the part in question is manufactured in China. So we have
what?
Yeah. So I mean, Harley's not the only one making parts, getting parts made in China, and this manufacturer produces parts for Audi and Ford and a lot of other automotive brands. So Harley's not unique to this.
Oh crap! I own an Audi and a Ford. I should go take a look for any cracks.
But yeah, Chinese parts in Harleys, it's a very touchy subject. So this is surely not going to help with that.
Yeah, kind of the cherry on top of the egg on their face. But again, not the only manufacturer to have had to, unfortunately, double recall. Total recall.
Total recall.
Yeah, also being recalled recently is the Ducati Panigale V4 and Streetfighter V4.
Wait. Before we get into the Ducati recall, for the Harley one, there has been no reported incidents of any accidents, injuries, or anything like that.
There was one crash, but that was during the first recall. There have been no reports of a crash since that first recall was.
That's more than enough.
Started.
And they were able to determine that crash was caused by the cracked triple clamp.
No, I think with recalls, it's always could be.
They have, it's possible. I mean, there's always multiple factors involved with a crash, so it's hard to really say, oh, it's that's why. But they have to be careful.
Yeah. All right, back to the Ducati recall.
Yeah, the V4s are being recalled because of a risk of rear brake failure, and that is because of it's the hose connecting the rear caliper to the ABS system is a little too close to the exhaust, so the heat from the exhaust can damage the hose, impacting ABS and rear brake operation.
I've heard Ducatis run hot sometimes.
I've heard that.
Oh, do they?
I mean, the brakes just slow you down, man. That's
right. The coward pedal.
Who uses the rear brake? Not me.
Exactly. But so what happened with the first recall, between the first recall and the second one?
Yeah, the fix for the first recall didn't work, essentially.
Okay.
They fixed it originally. They added some more shielding. They said, okay, this should do it. Then they realized, oh, you know what? The problem's still happening.
Oops. Didn't work.
So they designed. So the first time they designed a new heat shield, and now they design a larger heat shield.
Let's make it thicker, bigger, larger, better, stronger.
I always think it's funny when manufacturers of any kind, companies, whatever, they'll try to fix a problem without going to the root cause of it, fixing the main thing, either the exhaust being really ridiculously hot, or instead of having that small little line that's just like rubber tubing, maybe change it to a steel braided line, which I figured Ducati would have that. I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong.
But yeah, I mean, it does feel like putting a Band-Aid on the problem.
All right, let's get into some other Ducati news. And this one, I guess it's a first look, not really newsy, but I guess kind of newsy. What do we have with the Formula 73, DC?
Yes, it's a new retro styled, or at least retro influenced bikes. It's built on the Scrambler platform, but it's got like a cafe racer kind of partial fairing on it, and it's got colors inspired by the 750 Super Sport Desmo, classic 1973. 1973, but also production bike, but 1972 race bike at the Imola 200, the Paul Smart special there. This bike is notable because it is the first Ducati street bike to use the Desmo valve system. So with Ducati celebrating the original. So with Ducati celebrating its 100th birthday, it's like, you know what? Let's make a tribute bike in honor of that.
It is very nice looking. I love
the
colors, the paint, everything looks really great. I mean, to think of it being on the Scrambler platform, well, it's the last engine that's still using the Desmo valve train, so kind of makes sense there for sure. But that is a looker of a motorcycle. But I think they're limiting the production to 873 of those worldwide.
That's correct.
Okay. Yeah.
Oh, they're gonna be expensive.
I'm gonna chime in here and say I love the way it looks all from the back of the bike moving towards the front. I love everything until you get to the headlight.
It is a $20,000 Scrambler.
Well, if we're talking about a $20,000 Scrambler, then let me go back to the Paul Smart bike, and those fairings on that bike had like sparkle embedded within the fairing paint.
Diamonds, I heard.
Real ones. Yeah. I really want to like this thing, but
you're not going to buy one anyway.
Well, of course not. Not on this paycheck. You kidding me?
Okay. I've got a Ford and an Audi.
Yeah, I'm broke because of those things.
Bring it back to the U.S., dude.
Ooh,
5 takeaways from Harley-Davidson's Q4 2025 financial results. Dennis, take it away.
In case you haven't heard, Harley isn't doing very well lately.
What?
I heard that earlier in the podcast.
Yes. Recall aside, sales are down, market share's down. But again, some of that was kind of expected because part of the problem was that they had way too much inventory sitting around dealerships, not flying out the door. So they kind of slowed down production to kind of ease some of that pressure off, which is kind of necessary. So by necessity, numbers have to be down because there's just way too much stock in the marketplace out there right now, and you're not getting significantly different a bike from 2026 to 2025 or 24. So that's part of the problem, but again, that's a band-aid to a bigger problem, which is generally the market for expensive heavyweight cruisers and tours is not what it used to be.
Some of the audience is aging out, but we did get some sick new trikes maybe because of it.
Harley says they are going to have a new business plan that they will announce in May ahead of their next quarterly report, which is their first business plan under their new CEO, Ari Stars. So we're not quite sure what to expect there. We have some ideas. They are trying to reach out to dealers and try to help them out. They've stopped, their e-commerce plan has basically changed, so they're no longer shipping out directly from Harley to customers. They're instead directing customers to dealerships, which should help dealers, but some customers aren't thrilled with having to actually go out the door to look for parts.
I mean, it does seem like the overall sentiment, as far as what's slightly even changed, or at least been discussed at this point, is moving back to a more dealer-focused, attitude from the business plan. So yeah, I mean, they're our national, one of our national treasures. So hopefully we can get this thing turned around and get them pointed in the right direction, and everything will be good to go in the future.
I am curious to see how Stars is his name, right? Artie Stars. Yeah. Any indication as far as what he has in mind for the EV side of Harley's business?
Well, LiveWire is still going. They've cut costs and their expenses significantly over the last couple of years.
But at the same time, they're headed in the right direction, right? They've reported less of a loss.
Every quarter, they are reporting less and less of a loss. And I know people are still not happy with any loss at all. But in a bigger picture, it's not a significant needle mover for Harley. Like Harley by itself without LiveWire is big enough that this is, a bit of a footnote. In fact, actually, based on current projections right now, next year, tariffs would actually cost Harley more than LiveWire will.
Yeah, well, some of that might change with the Supreme Court ruling, but not even about to get too deep into that in this podcast.
No, go on.
No. What's really the two things are really going to be what makes or breaks LiveWire going forward. One is the new Honcho models. They're small mini bikes, which they're hoping to sell in higher volumes. But on the business side, they're also looking for some external funding. So they're trying to I think they're trying to sell more shares. So you're trying to get money from investors instead of Harley itself.
Well, time will tell. Which historically is not the easiest thing to do in this space. On a side note, there's also on the written article on Mo, Ford CEO Jim Farley is going to be leaving the Harley board at the end of his term, which is not the point that I'm trying to make. I just wanted to say a fun fact that you guys already know, but Jim Farley is the cousin of Chris Farley.
I knew that's where we're at.
Yeah.
Little tidbit.
Yeah. I don't know what he does on the board, but he is the cousin of Chris Farley, so that's cool.
Yeah, so there's that.
And he's apparently leaving Harley to go join the McDonald's board. So one American icon to another.
He's all about the Americana.
Love it.
Wow.
Well, I think, there was an announcement from MV Agusta that was kind of, definitely a fun dig at kind of the whole motorcycle industry, the way that things are headed with a lot of, at least a few manufacturers. But yeah, Troy, why don't you fill us in on what's going on with MV?
Well, MV released a press release that specifically just said to the world, all of our electronics packages, if you want to call them that, all the electronics available on our bikes are going to be standard throughout the lineup. You don't need to buy certain packages or certain
No demo
features,
mode.
no demo modes, none of that. Like a certain orange brand that's across the way from us. It was just funny. It's just funny.
I mean, it's clearly, like when I read it, I was like, I was thinking of a few different manufacturers, but I don't remember which one of you had mentioned it, but it was like, oh yeah, well, don't forget that, their parent used to be the parent company when KTM, the group, bought MV is specifically, the thing with the demo mode. It's, in theory, it's nice if you get to try something and you're like, oh, I don't really need that, and I can piecemeal buy some electronics. But it's also like giving it to you for 600 miles or whatever, then taking it away is that leaves a bad taste in a lot of motorcyclists' mouths, I think.
Once you pay for something and you get the thing and then they take it away from you.
Yeah, it's not really cool.
That's not cool.
For me, the most frustrating thing is actually what I've noticed with Ducati. I think BMW might do it too, actually, but is to get a physical button for something and have to pay for the software to use it. The worst, right?
Yes. Very upsetting.
Agreed. Yeah, but so MV clearly knew what they were doing with that press release. Initially, I kind of passed on it because I thought it was just a silly little marketing ploy from them. But, I think people are frustrated enough with it that, I got some comments on the article and whatnot, and I think people do appreciate MV's standing up to that.
Yeah, I mean, a fun little... Oh, go ahead, Dennis.
Like, they didn't have to say it. I mean, this was their practice to begin with, so it's not like anything changed. Like, they were doing this the entire time. They just felt the need to point this out for some reason.
Yeah,
just a reminder.
A little sour like the oranges in southern Spain, right, Sylvia?
Yeah.
Ooh.
Which is a great time for an ad break.
Yeah. What? Okay. Well, all right. With that, let's take a quick second and hear from our sponsor. Time for a quick pit stop and a shout out to the Honda Goldwing. Adjustable wind protection, heated comfort, and Apple CarPlay set the tone. Add refined suspension, a responsive chassis, and easy loading luggage for a first-class ride without the seatbelt sign. Because touring isn't just about the miles, it's about making every one count. Learn more about the 2026 Goldwing and Goldwing Tour at powersports.honda.com. All right, and we are back, and unfortunately, we're back with more sad news. I swear this gets better later on. Unfortunately, we have to come back and pass on the news of George Barber passing at the age of 85. If you don't necessarily know who George Barber is and you're a motorcyclist, there's a good chance you know about his museum in Alabama. The Barber Museum is the largest motorcycle museum in the world, I believe. Having been there myself, I think most of you have also.
I haven't been there yet.
No, you gotta go.
It is.
I know, it's on my list.
It's
incredible.
Absolutely incredible. It is a sight. The racetrack itself is super cool, but the museum is also super freaking cool.
The racetrack is cool. The grounds are cool. There's all sorts of weird stuff tucked away. But yeah, I mean, the museum is a absolute must visit destination for any motorcycle worldwide. It is a very much a world-class museum. It's huge. The way it's set up is really neat. It kind of spirals up with this huge elevator that is actually shaft driven. So it's got a huge long shaft that goes like all the way into the ground versus a cable pulley system. So it can also lift a lot of weight, and it's big enough to move, all sorts of cars, motorcycles, whatever. But
That's cool.
yeah, it's the whole place is super cool.
Yeah.
So thank you, George Barber, for everything that you have done.
Absolutely. Yeah. Interestingly enough, George Barber worked in the dairy business, and then just collected bikes on his own starting in the 70s. Actually, he was collecting cars at first. Whoa, easy there, Ryan. You all right?
I was excited about the museum.
Okay. Yeah. He actually started off collecting cars and then realized that was too expensive, too competitive. Lots of people were trying to buy, and still are trying to buy, cool old classic cars. So he turned his attention to motorcycles. And then in 2003, I believe. In 94, he established his own museum. But in 2003, the racetrack opened, and he moved his collection to there. And it is just phenomenal. I've literally been there, and I've been at the racetrack, ridden around there, raced around there. Absolutely love it. I love the racetrack just as much, and I've been there. Literally been there when the doors opened in the morning, when they unlocked the doors, and they had to kick me out when the doors closed at the end of the day, and I still didn't see everything.
Wow.
Yeah, there's so much to see.
It's incredible.
I will say that I did hear that when he was collecting the cars, he wanted to have the best, biggest museum, and he realized it wasn't going to happen with cars, or it was going to be too expensive or difficult or whatever. And he was like, you know what? I'm going to make the best motorcycle museum in the world. And I think he did a pretty good job.
The cool thing is, like, there's a couple of cars that he collected still in the museum just because they're his.
Yeah, not going to get rid of them.
Right. But yeah, if you haven't gone, anybody, including you, Sylvia, get yourself there. It is such an amazing place. All right. Moving on from Mr. Barber to some really interesting safety innovation. I guess innovations. Yeah, that's a good word for it. Ryan, you got to go to Stockholm and visit the Mips factory.
I don't think I'd call it a factory. I think I'd call it office and lab.
Okay,
but
the Mips offices and laboratories.
Yes,
as they say over there.
Sure.
Yeah, tell us about that.
So that was really cool. If you don't know what Mips is, it's a helmet technology that is really simple, but it's kind of, taken off quite a bit in a lot of industries. There's a lot of motorcycle helmets that use it, but there's a ton of, like, my bicycle helmet has it. There are equestrian helmets, all sorts of helmets across many industries that use this. And it's basically a slip layer. And they have a few different kinds of products, but the simplest one is a slip layer that is supposed to mimic your cerebrospinal fluid in your skull. So the fluid between your skull and your brain, that allows your brain to move a little bit versus just totally shear and rip itself apart in an impact that has rotational forces to it. So this adds another slip layer, outside of your skull, and allows, when the helmet hits the ground, most of the time your helmet hits the ground and slides, right? You're not hitting directly into something. So this gives you a little bit more slip layer to mitigate rotational injuries, and this is some of the conversations happen in American football, all sorts of things. But that's, at the base level, that's what Mips is, and that's what they do. And I think what was cool about, it was really cool to get to see the lab and everything with all the testing equipment, the super tall drops that they have, all sorts of different anvils to hit things with, basically sandpaper on them to add rotational, forces to the hit of an oblique anvil or whatever. And that was cool. And they've got like a counter ticking off on the wall of how many tests that they've done. And they've got a few different labs globally, but you could, while we were standing there talking about the lab, the number was going up because the lab in China was doing testing, so it's pretty cool. They're just constantly testing in all these different places. And when they showed us, how everything worked and ran a couple tests so we could check stuff out, the number was ticking up, obviously as we were doing that too. So it's every time that they slam a helmet into an anvil, how many times they've done it. But I think what was most interesting to me, and I've noticed it when you're, if you have a chance to go to a place where a motorcycle is made, like if you ride a BMW in Germany, if you ride a Triumph in the UK, if you check out this Swedish company's HQ in Stockholm, it's the culture kind of permeates the product, so the simplicity in design, the innovation that's understated, that's all in all sorts of Swedish design, whether it's, furniture or something like this. So getting to see it in Stockholm and getting to see, there's a thing called fika in Sweden, and it's basically like a ritualized coffee break. And it's, everybody does it. Everyone stops everything they're doing and go have an afternoon cup of coffee and maybe a nice pastry or something. And the entire office shuts down 3 times a day, 1 fika in the morning, lunch, and fika in the afternoon. And everybody convenes in this really nice setup, cafeteria kind of setup that they've got in the office. The office is pretty cool. But yeah, just seeing everyone get together and all the tables packed and everyone just, I don't remember the last time I didn't eat lunch at this desk. so seeing that was refreshing. But again, like getting to check out a manufacturer's stuff, where they're from, where they're developing stuff, it's a pretty unique experience. And I think that was a really cool part of getting to check out the Mips headquarters.
There's a coffee shop by my house called Fika Fika. Now I understand.
There you go. The more you know.
now I get it.
There you go.
I've wondered about Mips, but other brands that are so invested in themselves, and the next topic will relate to that as well, is how much do the Mips folks, how open are they to other opinions? Because there's some, I wouldn't say controversy, but there's chatter that Mips is ineffective or not really does a whole lot. How do they counter that?
Yeah, I mean, I think the way that they do it, and I would say they are a bit guarded with their own data and their own testing and whatnot, but what they kind of rely on to, contradict some of the opinions out there is basically they rely on third-party testing. So they give their stuff out to everyone, have other places test it, and are kind of like, see, they said our stuff was good. You don't have to rely on what we say and what our data says. But I mean, it's the same conversation around the way 6D does rotational impacts, the way Arai handles rotational impacts with just the shell shape. And, they're not the only, these aren't the only 3 out there. There are other technologies built to mitigate this. But I think one other interesting thing that Mips now does, they've kind of had this program in the making for a while now, but they'll basically use, super complex software to digitally run all sorts of tests. So they'll get all sorts of material data and say you've got a carbon fiber helmet that has normal EPS, and some plastic bits, whether it's off-road helmet or street helmet. And they basically use this complex, can't think of the name of the software, but they get all the material data and they can understand how all that material works together, like how the carbon fiber next to the EPS will work. And they run, millions of tests digitally, and they help helmet manufacturers design prototypes, basically build the prototype in a CAD, if you will, before they ever have to build a physical prototype. So it can kind of, impact if a helmet manufacturer is into the idea and wants to use the service, they can basically get more data ahead of building an actual prototype. And another note to wrap that up with Mips is they also bought Koroyd, which basically looks like a bunch of green straws put together and is a replacement for EPS. I'm looking at a Climb helmet right now that has it. I love it. It dissipates heat really well, and it's supposed to be a better impact absorbent than traditional EPS and kind of last longer. But Mips bought them. So two pretty interesting and innovative safety companies to come together. So I think that'll be cool in the future.
That has the potential to be really pretty big. All right, moving on from Mips on a related topic. The Arai XD5 adventure helmet. We just released a video, our in-gear video, where we review, test, and talk about the stuff we're wearing. And this one is the Arai XD5, obviously the successor to the XD4, which I have not worn before, but Ryan has for sure. I'm not sure if you have, Sylvia.
Sure.
I haven't. I did like for a brief moment, but just to put it on and feel it compared to the XD5, but I didn't like ride in it.
Yeah. So, I mean, the XD5, for me anyway, the thing with Arai is no matter what their helmets, adventure, street, whatever, their philosophy is that R75 shape, which is essentially getting it as close to an egg shape as possible to promote this idea of glancing off an object and never actually like getting stuck onto an object.
Mips?
Right. Their Arai's argument is that a technology like Mips isn't necessary because the shape of an Arai will have your head glancing off an object, and your head won't be absorbing as much energy as a less rounded helmet shape, for example.
Which is even funnier to think about with the XD5 because the shape of the helmet.
Yeah, in fact,
it's an adventure helmet.
I just so happen to have it right here next to me.
Look at that! If you're watching this, if you're on Spotify, you're missing out.
So yeah, in the video, I go into more of the differences from the XD4. Some of the venting is different. The chin bar shape is a little bit different. Wider eye port. The face shield has pin lock capabilities now.
Finally.
Yeah. So since I haven't worn the previous XD4, and honestly, adventure helmets are not my area of expertise, what I can say is, like all Arais I've ridden with, I should say, like all Arais I've ridden with, the interior is super plush. For my intermediate oval head, it fits me great. I wore this all throughout our trip in Northern Ontario. Never any problems with hot spots or pressure points or any of that. Very comfortable helmet as far as the fit goes. My biggest problem with it, and the reason why I might not recommend it.
Ooh.
Hold your hats, buddy.
Oh God, what is it? Why?
It is so loud. It is so loud.
Just wear earplugs.
I do wear earplugs.
Ooh.
I wear earplugs with every helmet I wear, and it's insanely loud. It was, when you wear earplugs and you're still like, holy crap, this is such a loud helmet. Something is amiss. Something's wrong. So I don't know if that's my particular helmet I got. Nothing seems wrong with it. But yeah, it is so distracting how loud it is that it's hard to focus sometimes. So
I don't know, Sylvia, how much time have you put in the XD5 that you have?
2 years.
Oh, okay. So probably some miles in there too. Did you think it was like absurdly loud?
Be honest.
I'm going to be honest. It's
Please.
Pretty loud, especially if you're riding on the freeway. It's when I take it off, my ears are like, oh my God, please don't put me through that again. And I do wear earplugs as well. It's, for me, that's one flaw. And there's one more, and it could be my personal head shape, but all Arais fit me really well, except for the XD5. I'm not really sure. Like in this area, I get like a up and down, not a side to side, but an up and down, a lot of motion.
Cheeks, for the people that aren't watching.
I thought it was the cheek pads because they always give me bigger cheek pads because I have the smallest head in the world. So it's not the cheek pads. I don't know. I think it's just the slightly different shape internally that makes it sit a little differently on my head. But all my other like Corsair X's, love. But for some reason, the XD5 just doesn't fit me right. It always slides
I
down, and then when I'm doing photos, my arm like this, it doesn't look right.
Yeah, I haven't put as many miles in mine, I think, as either one of you, but and that's probably why it didn't really stand out to me as being overly loud, because I just haven't logged enough miles in it. I don't love the shape and that the chin bar is closer to your mouth now. Kind of like the shape of the XD4 a little bit more, but they did make the entrance, the port a little bit wider. Maybe that also has something to do with the way it sits on your head, Sylvia. But yeah, so mixed emotions about that one. I think it's also maybe slightly heavier and more expensive than the XD4, so we're kind of going the wrong direction on that one. But hot takes from the most staff.
Not redeeming qualities. Well, no, I should say quality-wise, it's great. Like all Arais, the quality of it is great.
No problems there.
Just the wind noise is a bit much. All right, let's get into the juicy stuff, the bikes we've ridden recently. And we'll start with you, Sylvia. You got to ride the 2026 Ducati Monster. That, well, other than the weather, that sounded like a lot of fun.
Yes, I'm really sad because, like you said, because of the weather, I didn't get to really test the bike, because I think I would have loved it. I've ridden the previous generation and I loved that bike. This one felt way more smooth and refined, especially needed in the rainy weather that we had in Spain. So, I really enjoyed it for the small amount of time that we rode. We cut our ride actually short by like 3 hours because the rain was so crazy. We also shortened our photo stops and our video stops. So yeah, it just made me sad because I really wanted to ride it some more.
I mean,
Sure.
at least your travel went smoothly, though, right?
If any of you are listening to this and you travel, please avoid what's that airport
Charles
called
de
in
Gaulle.
Paris?
Charles de Gaulle.
It's terrible. It's just not fun at all to be around. I was there because of a layover issue, and I was there for 16 hours. I was not allowed to leave my terminal for any other terminal. It didn't matter if I had my passport or my ID. It didn't matter. I had everything correct, but they said you can either leave the airport and come back in, but that's it. You can't travel to another terminal, and terminals are it's got like, I don't know, 20 terminals. It's huge.
Yeah, I would love to avoid Charles de Gaulle as much as possible. Also, and I think Troy feels the same way. But
yeah, I hate flying through there so much.
Anyway,
yeah,
no, I mean, it's a bummer that you didn't really get to exploit that bike, because everything that Troy and I have ridden with that new V2 engine has been really awesome. From the Panigale, the Multistrada, the Streetfighter. They're putting that thing in just about everything, and we're gonna have a chance to test a couple more bikes that are getting that engine too, with the Hypermotard and the Desert X. So I know I've loved it and everything. The way they've built the chassis around it with like the monocoque chassis, using the engine as a stress member, makes all of the bikes much more compact. And so, I mean, like you were saying, that's just super light handling, easy to maneuver. The engine is really, it's just really nicely and smoothly, dulls out the power. So I'm sure it would have been a fun bike to really get to push. Sorry you didn't get to do it on the press launch, but for sure, well, hopefully we can get a hold of one back here in the States and exploit that power a bit more.
I will say, even with all the weather, the hard rain and all that good stuff, all the puddles we went through, the bike handled so well in that condition. Like, all of us were riding pretty quick in that condition. I was pretty surprised. The bike handled it really well. The electronics were super helpful, and the seat height was really good for me. I have short little legs. I might be like 5'5.5", but my legs is just little baby legs. I have a long torso, so
it's really weird.
The baby legs, The seat height was so nice. almost flat footing on a naked like that was really awesome.
What
And
what is your inseam, just so people can have a reference?
I think it's 28 inches. I'm almost positive.
Okay.
It's just
Yeah.
little baby legs. Yeah.
Right.
So yeah, it was really nice. It was lightweight. The steering, what's it called?
Steering sweep.
Steering sweep
Yeah.
being so wide and usable was so nice. For me, I like a lot of low speed maneuvers because when I used to teach, it was always about low speed parking lot stuff. That bike had no issue turning around in a small, narrow one-way street. No issue at all. I didn't get close to the edge or anything. It turned amazing. Love that.
For anyone watching or listening who doesn't know what steering sweep is, we're just talking about turning the handlebars left to right and how far you can just turn the bars lock to lock. Some bikes you barely turn the bars and it hits the lock. Other bikes,
sport bikes are the worst offenders. Dirt bikes are the best.
Yeah.
Yes.
Exactly. Anyway, go on. Sorry.
No, you're good. So that was probably one of my more favorite things about it, seat height and being able to turn those bars. I think it looked great. I'm really sad we didn't get to see I think they call it white frost or something like that. The white model. I do like white bikes. I think they look clean. I think they look really pretty. So I'm kind of sad they didn't have any of those there. The other thing that I really loved about it, most of the naked bikes I've ridden, maybe this isn't the greatest comparison, but most of the naked bikes I've ridden, they don't have all the bells and whistles of cruise control and heated grips, especially for a twin, right? So I was really thankful for the heated hand grips on the cold, rainy day. And cruise control, I got to touch it a few times and it was super easy to use. That's the other thing. The electronics, I'm not very good with electronics because all my bikes are like crappy, like no electronics, not from the Century type of motorcycles. So using the electronics was so easy. They didn't teach me or tell me anything. They stopped us. The Ducati staff came over and was like, switch from road mode to wet mode. And I was like, okay. And I just start touching things and it immediately switched. And I was like, oh, that was super nice. Like very user friendly.
Intuitive. Nice.
Yes.
That's a big endorsement. But yeah, Ducati has really been nailing it with their electronics. It's pretty good.
For sure.
Yeah. Well, I mean, yeah, bummer the weather sucked, but it seems like you got as much as you possibly could out of the trip.
Got a taste.
Yes.
That's cool. Have you ridden anything else with the V2 engine? With the current V2 engine?
Does the Super Sport have it?
No.
Okay, then no.
Okay. That was the older.
Which sucks because the motors felt good in that just a little bit that I rode it, I really liked it.
Right. Yeah, no, we'll have to get you on one in good weather sometime soon.
As soon as we were done with the ride. Like we pulled into the parking lot and it stopped raining.
Of course.
And then they're like, okay, we're gonna go do videos. And I was like,
Of
no.
course. That's always how it goes.
The first ride review, it was like, what are you talking about, Rain? It looks beautiful. Beautiful southern Spain.
I know. People probably thought I was crazy because it's just a gorgeous background for the pieces to camera. It's just nice and beautiful and sunny. But yeah, it was raining the whole time.
Well, yeah, I'll get another go at that sometime soon, or maybe we'll see.
Yeah.
Troy, our off-road dude.
Oh God.
I heard you rode the 2026 Yamaha WR125R.
Yes, I did, and that is about the max that my off-road talent can handle.
Perfect.
That's exactly where I should have been, other than not on it at all. No, yeah. So Yamaha's whole pitch for the WR125R is kind of strange. I mean, they're going for beginners clearly. But in their presentation, they were saying how little bikes, little engines are sales-wise pretty popular. Like they were citing the Honda Grom being a big sales hit, but they were also citing the Kawasaki KLX 230, I believe, also being a big hit. And they were like, we don't really have anything that's street legal in the U.S. with a small engine other than like the TW200, and that thing's a million years old and has carburetors and it's, a fat tire bike. It's really awkward for modern day riders. And so the goal with the 125 WR125 was just to bring a modern engined little bike for, like I said, new riders who want to like get into the Yamaha family, try out some street, try out some dirt, or some people who maybe are more experienced but want to toss a bike on the back of their RV and just go have fun wherever they go. Yeah, I mean, with my limited experience, it's a pretty good learner bike. I mean, obviously, small engines, pretty much no power. It's hard to really do anything wrong with something like that. But I thought, for a 125, I wasn't expecting that much power. I figured I'm just going to like be shifting through the gears a million times and like revving the crap out of it. And I was, but the cool thing with the WR is it has variable valve intake actuation just on the intake cam. So that's an electronic servo that switches cam profiles at, in this case, 7,400 RPM. So you get, for a 125, you get some pretty good torque down low. And then like once you get the thing screaming, the cam profiles switch and it actually pulls up top. Like you get the thing screaming and you're not just running out of steam. It actually still goes. I was like,
and that is super cool that the Yamaha did that on that bike. I mean, that and the fuel injection, like that make that bike really approachable and a really good, option for people.
It makes total sense. I mean, it works. You're not going to scare yourself silly on the thing, but it actually has usable power on the bottom and down low. Again, like I have to stress, it's still a 125. Like you're not dealing with crazy horsepower. But yeah, the clutch is easy to use. Like everything works like you expect a Yamaha to work. The shifting works clean. The brakes aren't super powerful. They're not going to scare you, but they'll slow you down. They'll stop you. Obviously all the things you need brakes to do. And it's $4,000. I mean, you chuck one of those things on your RV, or if you are going to learn how to ride, this would be a good, if you are going to go with a brand new bike, this would be a good way to do it. The only concern I have maybe is the seat height is kind of tall. It's a narrow.
You felt like it was tall?
Me personally, no.
Okay.
But again, that is where my just overall riding experience comes into play. With that, like for me, I could put the balls of my feet on the ground and feel fine. I could see how a newer rider might be a little bit intimidated by the seat height, especially if they're short.
Yeah, I mean, you've got a 30-inch inseam, so
yeah.
Neither one of us are terribly tall.
But there were some other people on this ride that were like 5'1", but again, they're 5'1", but they have experience, so it wasn't an apples to apples comparison. But yeah, and then Sylvia, you called me out on this before we started this recording, but I mentioned how the WR125R is not freeway legal. You have corrected me on that. Would you please tell everyone what I got wrong there?
So every state is different for the CC requirements for the freeway. For example, in Arizona, the minimum requirement of CC is 100. And then in Michigan, the minimum requirement is 125 or above. So technically, in those states, you would be allowed to ride that bike on the freeway. However, this is a safety concern, right? If the freeway is 70 miles per hour, but the bike taps out at 65, I don't know. But if it's just a quick moment on the freeway, it's not bad. But look at your state specifically, because every state is different.
That said, I would not want to take this thing on the freeway, even for a little bit, because, I mean, I could have hit 60 with a long enough straightaway.
Downhill.
And downhill and a tailwind would totally help me get to like 62. As it were, I think with these short amounts of road that I had, I think I saw 56.
Oh my God.
Yeah,
So,
and given, if the speed limit out here, in Southern California is maybe 65 or whatever, and everyone's going 80. Yeah, that's a big delta.
So legal or not legal?
That's the top speed. Do with it what you will.
Yeah, exactly.
The weird thing is, though, some states, their freeways are only 55. So maybe it would be okay. You know?
Again, if you have a long enough straight that you can get up to speed, then
downhill.
Or
flat
with a giant draft from a semi-truck. But then you don't want to be calling a semi-truck in one of those things. So it's on you, but I wouldn't if I were you. All right. Moving away from the WR onto something a bit bigger. Ryan, you got to go to Cyprus to ride the 2026 Triumph Trident 800. It's pretty saucy, right?
I sure did. No, it is. It was a fun bike, and my press ride also started off in the rain, but thankfully it got dry for the last half of it, and we did the last half of it, unlike Sylvia's Monster experience. But I mean, it's a super, the Trident 660 has been super popular. It's just kind of a standard motorcycle, right? Super upright. You can look around. The 660 triple is great. And basically what Triumph did with this new Trident is just bumped it up, made it a bit. They kind of redesigned the entire chassis, both for the 660 and the 800. And then the suspension's a bit more of an upgrade on the 800. And obviously you've got more power. You've got ride modes, all sorts of stuff, but we took off in the rain and road mode. And I could not believe how hard it pulled from like 4,000 RPM to redline. The thing just instantly wants to loft the front wheel. But thankfully, as we've kind of seen with Triumph, all Triumph motorcycles really, like they've got the fueling down so good, and the feel at the throttle is so easy to just dial in the right amount of power that you want. So even though it really wanted to be a hooligan as soon as we took off, through wet roundabouts and stuff like that, I left it in road mode. It wasn't an issue to just manage it with my wrist. But once we got a chance to, head down the mountain into some dry roads, the thing was an absolute blast. We were going at a pretty saucy clip behind a former TT racer, and it was awesome. I mean, I would say the engine is the strongest point. The bike, again, it's pretty standard. It's maybe feels a little bit more sporty, like you're leaning forward a little bit more than the 660, but not much, not much at all. So if you're familiar with the 660, it's very similar to that, but just with a beefed up engine and some extra body panels and whatnot. But I think one of my main gripes from when I just think back to the rip that we had down the mountain, the front brake is strong and it totally gets the job done. But if you are getting into it, hard and heavy, that initial bite just doesn't give you any feedback. And then you're into some pretty serious braking power, which if someone were to slow down in front of you quicker than you thought they were going to, and you really got into that brake lever and maybe hit a little dip in the road at the same time and did a little unexpected endo and had to slam it down real quick, it's a little more exciting than I would have liked it to have been. But I mean, overall, it's technically under 10 grand. It's right at 10 grand, but this is a super nice package from Triumph for $10,000. And I think, it's not to say that there aren't other really good motorcycles in this category, like Yamaha MT-09, something like that. I think they actually mentioned the Z900 and the BMW's F900 as, direct competitors. I think this one, without putting them together, I can't say for sure, but in my, my previous experience with those two bikes, I don't think they're quite as strong competitors as this Trident 800 is, but the Yamaha MT-09 is awesome. So
yeah, that's a high bar to clear.
Definitely. So we should get a couple of these bikes, and maybe we'll throw a third one in there so all three of us can get out and do a little bike comparison maybe.
Yeah.
Well, yeah. Interestingly enough, as we are recording this podcast, tomorrow I hop on a plane to try the little version of that bike. So
yeah. Yeah, well, and so the frame, like I was saying, they updated the frame across both, so you'll have the new frame. And what they did, one of the major updates for these bikes is they've switched from a single throttle body to 3 throttle bodies. So they kind of had to hog out the middle of the frame, but they didn't have to make it any wider from
That's good.
the outside perspective. So I'm sure that'll be a good one for you.
Yeah, I mean, I rode the original Trident 660. Liked the engine, didn't love the engine. Now this new 660 gets more horsepower and some refinements, and should be fun. And then we get to try the Tiger Sport 660 too. So,
I mean, I think one thing that does make the Trident 660 stand out, and when we tested it before, and we did full naked bike comparison with it and everything, that in that lower middleweight category, it's just cool to have a triple. There's so many twins and whatnot, so having a different engine configuration is always nice to shake things up a bit.
I do wonder though if having an 800 version of this engine and a 660 version of this engine, do you think they're too close to each other?
The experience with the 800 is a lot more thrilling in terms of performance.
Well, it better be.
But yeah, obviously, but I think that's a valid concern to bring up.
Yeah, I guess we'll see how the sales numbers play out in due time.
Yeah, well, and they also dropped the Street Triple R, which they didn't say that this is replacing the Street Triple R, because that's not apples to apples there, but it was interesting that they brought it up in the conversation around the Trident 800, that they were discontinuing the R model, the Street Triple. They're still going to have the RS, but basically what the chief product officer said about that was that if anyone wanted a Street Triple, they wanted the best Street Triple. So they were just selling more RSs than they were Rs. And they're like, well, we'll just get rid of it. So it was interesting that they brought it up around the Trident 800, but it, again, not really apples to apples, just kind of in the same conversation, I guess.
Guess we'll see how it goes.
We will see.
Let's see. Oh,
why don't you tell them about our golden boy, Troy? Why don't you tell us about the thing you got to rip around the track and the canyon roads recently?
Yeah, so it's a pretty exciting time to be a fan of naked bikes, and it has been for a few years now, but the most recent bike I got to ride was the 2026 KTM 990 Duke R, and if you know anything about R bikes, the R means really, really sickly fast and cool and upgraded and just all kinds of good stuff. Where do I even start? I mean, the 990 Duke, the standard one without the R, was a step up from the 890 Duke. The chassis stiffer, more power, obviously, but I got to ride that, then the standard 990 with the 1390 Super Duke. So my perceptions were a bit out of whack there, but I felt like the standard 990 Duke was a bit soft. Again, askewed because I was also riding the 1390 Super Duke. With the with the 990 Duke R, you've basically got the 990 RCR, the fully faired sport bike, but without the fairings, but the frame's the same, the swing arm's the same, the linkage is the same, suspension is the same, slightly tuned differently because of the two bikes and what they're used for. And then that guy's the 990 Duke R is just rad. That engine makes a little bit more horsepower than the standard 990, 130 compared to 123. It sounds awesome even with the stock exhaust. The chassis is all about, it works better the faster you go. It doesn't like going slow. It wants you to attack the corners. It wants you to just be aggressive and be a maniac and just go balls out in the typical KTM style that we're used to from that company. Go, 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 all in, ready to race. It's amazing. But the thing, I expected the engine to be cool. I expected the chassis to be pretty finely tuned. What I wasn't ready for was the electronics. And I mean, especially that 8.8 inch TFT display. It's massive. And it works it's a touchscreen, and you can use your gloved hand to adjust things. depending on your glove. If you're wearing a thick winter glove, it may not work as well, but like I was wearing some regular summer gloves and I could move stuff around without taking my glove off, and it worked pretty well. And there's an anti-glare, anti-fingerprint coating on it, so it stays clear the whole time. But beyond just being huge and being easy to use, like so much is at your fingertips, quite literally. You can change the mode, you can change within the modes, you can change the different settings like throttle, ABS, TC, launch control, so on and so forth. You can do so much from that screen, whether you want to use your hands or use the toggles on the left bar. And like Sylvia, like you were saying with the Monster, it was so intuitive. Like,
Yeah.
okay, I want to do the mode. Boop, press the mode. I want to go to this mode. All right, just toggle over to that. Click, done. I want to change this. Just click that, done. I want to do that. Click that. Scroll this way, scroll that way. Click it, done. Like it was so easy to use, and I could do it while I was riding. Like most of the things you can change while you're riding, and then with the touchscreen, you can just do it with your gloves on still. Like it made a lot of sense. And then
but also you don't have to use the touchscreen. It's got the normal like toggle switch
has
on the handlebar too.
It has the toggles, and all of that works really well too. So if you want to keep your hands on the bars, which is a good practice,
you have the option.
You have the option too, and it all works. It's the most intuitive by using your fingertips, but it's not that much harder to just use the toggles with the bars to do that. But yeah, so we got to spend a day on the street riding the Palms to, what's it called? Palms to Pines?
Palms to Pines, yeah.
Something like that. Then we spent the day at P2P. Then we spent the day at Chuckwalla on some slicks, riding around, and like, the thing is aggressive. It's just, it wants to go fast. It doesn't like going slow. The Stylema brakes now, it's Stylema calipers with 320 mil discs, which the standard 990 has rebranded J1 calipers and 300 mil discs. I mean, we've loved Stylemas for as long as they've been around. They're just so good, and nothing's changed with this version too. I really am finding very little to fault about it because it's just so fun, aggressive, fast, like all those things you expect from something that should be a badass motorcycle, you're getting with the 990 Duke R.
And I think what's interesting too is like when we think about the 790s and 890s that came before it, most recently, it like when we were discussing some of the changes and we were talking about, the RCR and the standard Duke 990 and the differences and whatnot, it's interesting to see how they've used the RCR kind of chassis setup and whatnot to base this 990 Duke R off of. And it's not so much heavily based, only on the 990 standard Duke. It's now got this racier, KTM now has the racier model in its lineup. So we can kind of start with that chassis, use a linkage for the rear shock versus the PDS mounted on the standard 990 Duke. So, I mean, there's some significant changes in there. Is the fork wider too?
The fork is a 48 mil diameter on the R. The standard
43 on the standard.
The standard is 43.
Yeah, so I mean that's quite a bit of an upgrade in terms of just dialing in the shock and then the stiffness from the fork. So I mean that's a big difference.
The weird thing though for me was so going back to the 890 Duke R, I really liked that bike, but one of the things I liked about it was how flexible the chassis was. Like, some might think that's not a good thing. I really love that chassis flex because to me, it came back as communication. Like, I knew what the bike was doing. I could ride the bike hard.
It wasn't jarring.
Yeah. It was good chassis flex. The 990s, the standard and the R, are way stiffer. And so that communication, you have to be more focused to understand what the bike is telling you. It'll still tell you whatever it's doing, but it requires more from the rider to extract the most from it. And that's cool, but what I liked about the 890 Duke was it was so playful. And now with the 990 Duke R, that
More
playful,
serious.
yeah, the playfulness is gone, and this is like super serious,
Mm-hmm.
which is not good or bad. It's just different.
Just yeah.
And so, yeah, I mean the engine's killer though. Like that's pretty
Yeah.
rad.
Well, I mean, I think the only real like negative thing you had to, I mean, even like just looking at the highs and sighs, I think the only real negative thing was the transmission being a bit crunchy.
On the street, the shifts were a bit crunchy. On the track, because the higher revs, quick shifters worked better at the higher revs. It was okay. Getting into a tuck on the track was not great. The seat, the front to back area of the seat.
Just the seat. Yeah,
Yeah,
it's kind of short.
Once I went to go scoot back on the seat, I hit the seat cowl for the passenger seat super fast, and I'm like, oh, that's it. So I'd have to like lift my butt up, sit on the seat cowl, and then get down into a tuck.
Yeah, I
was
wasn't.
awkward.
Well, and I asked you about that because if you had noticed it on the street or if it was an issue, because actually on the Trident 800, that was another one of my gripes too. The seat is really short from front to back. So even like at the end of the day when we were getting to, rip down the mountain, I did find myself just trying to scoot back and move around a little bit more on the bike. And it was the same deal. I kept running into the passenger seat, which was, like the cowling. It's just kind of quite a bit higher up. So it's interesting that both of those bikes kind of have a shorter, smaller seat, but
yeah, we've been going through a phase of having more room in the cockpits for various naked bikes, and now we're kind of coming back down.
Yeah, hopefully it's not a trend and it's just a couple anomalies.
And I think the best part about this bike, it's $13,400.
A relative bargain.
Cheaper than the Ducati Streetfighter, cheaper than what else did I put in there? Oh, then the Triumph, the Street Triple.
Mm-hmm.
Cheaper than that.
Way bigger engine.
But it's more expensive than the Honda CB1000 SP.
Probably doesn't get enough credit.
So yeah, exactly. So I'm curious, like,
what do you think, Sylvia?
I rode that CB1000 SP, and me personally, I had trouble understanding why it was as expensive as it was.
Oh,
hot take.
Now, don't get me wrong, it wasn't that expensive, but I didn't mesh with it. Maybe it just wasn't my thing. For me, it was very heavy. It was very like slow to turn. Don't get me wrong, it's a Honda, it should last forever, right? They have that reputation, but I just didn't see like the fun factor. I love the 750. Love the Hornet 750. Love.
Me too.
But the 1000, I don't know. I didn't
think,
feel like it had character.
Yeah, I think at this point you're the only one on staff that's ridden it, because we had a former staffer, Tom Roderick, rode it for us.
He was ripping that day, by the way. He was so funny.
Yeah.
Oh, man. They all were
crazy.
Oh my God, that day was so fun. Everyone was having such a good time. I had a blast, like just in general. But I don't know why it didn't have any character for me.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah.
I can understand. I'm sorry?
No, go ahead.
I was going to say, I can understand how a KTM would have a lot of character because it's more on the like fancy side, right? I don't know. The fancy side. I'm so jealous that you got to ride that 990 because I wanted to so bad. And of course you're fast. So like at Chuckwalla, you were probably just like in the zone. I do have one small question beforehand. I don't know if this matters too much, but I rode the KTM 990, like the original one, the 2005 to 2013, that model. Mm-hmm. Did they pay homage to that or whatever?
Oh, I'm glad you asked that question. So the colorway of the new bike, it's got the black tank, the black upper portion of the tank, the white lower portion, the orange frame, the orange wheels. That was a bit of an homage to that bike, the 2011 to 2013 990 Super Duke. That bike had a similar graphic scheme. So
Mm-hmm.
the way they did up this new one was paying tribute to the old bike.
Oh, good. I'm
Yeah.
glad because I loved that old 990. I
A lot of
loved
people
it.
do.
Yeah, it was a cool bike.
It was so smooth, and it was big and bulky, but it was smooth, and it just felt good. It wheelied real well. Like, I loved it.
That's what we're
that's the
aiming
main
for.
reason.
Yeah, exactly. It would be cool if we could find somebody who would let us ride one of those next to one of these and just kind of do a compare and contrast, you know? That'd be kind of fun.
I might know someone, actually.
That's one of your 18 bikes, isn't it?
Not me. It's not me. No, I don't have one of those.
The short version is, if you're thinking about the 990 Duke R and have been on the fence about it, just do it. It's rad. You should just buy one and have a good time. All right. Well, that is it on my list of things to talk about.
I think that pretty well does it for episode 21, man.
Cool. All right. Well, obviously that means you all need to stay tuned for episode 22, where we will interview somebody, an as yet named guest. So be on the lookout for that. Some housekeeping items here. If you're watching us on the YouTubes, leave us a comment, say something nice, preferably, about us. A thumbs up, all that good jazz. If you're listening to us on Spotify, Apple Music, whatever, also leave a comment, but also leave us a nice rating, if you will. That would be helpful. Or don't. You know, it's a free country. Do whatever you want. But yeah, I think that wraps things up, huh, guys?
I think so, dude.
Good stuff. Well, once again, welcome to the team, Sylvia. We're pretty jazzed to have you on board.
Happy to be here.
We'll do some fun stuff together, I'm sure.
Definitely.
All right, with that pretty much wraps up episode 21 of the Bore Stoke Podcast, brought to you by the Honda Goldwing and the Honda Goldwing Tour. So thanks, everybody, for watching. Ride safe, and we'll see you next time. And that's a wrap for this episode of Bore Stoke, brought to you by Honda Power Sports and the iconic Goldwing. From its smooth flat six to advanced rider aids and modern tech, it's the gold standard in touring for a reason. Whether you're serious about long distance or just long weekends, if you're gonna ride something legendary. Discover the 2026 Goldwing and Goldwing Tour at powersports.honda.com.